Greetings metalheads and welcome to No Nonsense Metal Reviews. I'm George and today I'm going to be doing another album rankings episode, another worst to first, so from my least favourite to my favourite, of a band which is absolutely one of my favourites. This band in question, they are probably the biggest and most well known and most highly regarded symphonic metal bands around, a band from Finland. I am, of course, talking about the legendary Nightwish. Formed in the mid-90s, they have 9 studio albums in their catalogue, which I suppose that's a pretty good rate of releases, certainly when you factor in the kind of the complexity of their music, the very nature of this sort of music. They are a symphonic metal band. They incorporate a lot of different sort of elements. There's sort of folk elements in there. There's classical, sort of neoclassical music or contemporary classical music in the mix as well. Soundtrack style kind of music with huge epic compositions, but it's also very heavy at times. Nightwish can be a really heavy metal band at times, and a brilliant one as well. Right across the board, expert musicianship, absolutely fantastic stuff. I just think that Nightwish are an absolutely beautiful and incredible band. And as I say, they're one of the biggest symphonic metal bands around, if not the biggest, and they mean an awful lot to an awful lot of people. So please do bear in mind that this is entirely based on my opinion, and you may disagree, you may agree, but please feel free to give us your album ranking, give us your rankings of Nightwish. Feel free to have some discussion on my rankings. However, do remember, this is my opinion, so no one's wrong here, okay? So, we shall kick off with the number 9 then, so my least favourite Nightwish album. And I'm not going to say this is a terrible album, but for me, I really have failed to appreciate Human to Nature, which is the most recent album, released in 2020. I think this album, it kind of, to me, it doesn't really know what it is. It doesn't know whether it's a soundtrack album or it doesn't know if it's going to be a symphonic metal album. There are some good tracks here, such as the opening track Music is quite a grand piece, and we've got Noise as well, which is quite a heavy number. Pan is quite a good song. But this is the second album to feature the absolutely stunning vocals of Floor Jansen, and her vocal performance is brilliant throughout. You cannot fault it, nor would I fault the musicianship at all. I would not say that, there's any sloppy playing here. It's very tight musicianship right across the board. But what I really cannot quite appreciate, if you like, is that it doesn't really sound like the Nightwish of any of the previous albums. It doesn't really have the same kind of power behind it. It just doesn't have that same energy and spirit. Empu on guitars, absolutely amazing guitar work throughout. Marco Haitala, he really does seem to take a back seat in terms of vocals. I really like Marco's vocal style. Sadly, subsequently after this album, he's parted ways with the band. But I really like Marco's bass playing, and I really like his vocals. And he really does take a back seat on this album, which is another reason why I just can't quite appreciate it. And we've got Troy Donockley. He's a sort of multi-instrumentalist. He also does vocals on this album as well. Really talented man. Can't fault his musicianship, as I say. Then you've got Kay Harto on drums and percussions, and of course you've got Thomas Halopainen on the keys. A good musical array here. Absolutely, you cannot fault the musicianship, as I say, but it just really does lack the Nightwish kind of touch to it. As I mentioned, there are a couple of good tracks, but yeah, the power's really lost on me. Power's really lost. So that's why Human to Nature comes in at number 9. So my number 8 then, we go right back to 1997 for the debut album, Angels Fall First. Now please do bear in mind that I do like this album. I think this is a really quite interesting starting point for the band. I love the kind of the youthful vibe and feel to it. Of course, you've got the legendary Tarja Turunen on vocals. Now, Taya, even at this stage, is an amazing singer, but her vocals, she hasn't really kind of like found her fit in terms of her voice fitting this sort of style of music, this what was essentially symphonic kind of power metal at this stage. Her voice doesn't quite neatly fit. The male vocals really don't work. They really just fall flat, in my opinion, here. Also, the material on this album just does seem a little bit random. There isn't really like a theme to it. Not saying that it has to be a concept album or anything like that, but it does seem to sort of lack a flow. You've got the opening track, Elven Path, which is quite an epic kind of fiddly, folk-infused fairy tale. You've got Beauty and the Beast, which is a good song. You've got The Carpenter, which is a bit of an odd one. I can't really make out if that's a Christian-leaning song or not, but hey-ho. Tutankhamun as well, which is a good song, but it's just a bit random. But there are some good tracks. As I say, this is a really nice starting point. You can kind of get a feel here of where Nightwish were going, but they did dramatically change along the way from here. It does have that feel. It does have that kind of that magical element to it, but it does seem a little bit random. So that's why Angels Fall First is my number 8. Just a lot of potential, not a bad album, just a little bit kind of weak and kind of losing track in places, I think. Just seems a bit random. Then things do massively improve from there, of course. But my number 7 then would be Wishmaster. This was released in 2000. This was the band's 3rd album, in fact. Now, I think this is a great album. We start to get, from this point on, into the territory of just fantastic albums right across the board. And this was a big album for the band, with tracks such as the opening track, She Is My Sin, which is a beautiful composition. Taya's vocals really she's starting to really come into her own here. The Kinslayer, which is a heavy track, certainly in terms of lyrics and music style. Come Cover Me is an absolutely beautiful, heart-wrenching track, really beautiful, amazing vocals, really fantastic stuff. Wanderlust, another good one. Title track is brilliant. Personal favourites for me would be Bear Graced Misery, Deep Silent Complete, which is an absolute beauty, and the very epic Dead Boys Poem, which is a very emotive piece. The closing track, Phantasmic, is also an excellent number. You really get the feel that Nightwish are going places with this album. Absolutely love it. So Wishmaster, my number 7. Number 6 then is the album before that. This is Oceanborn. Now, I love this album, and I think that the reason why this album ranks slightly higher for me than Wishmaster is simply because I'm more familiar with it. I must be honest. This was one of the first Nightwish albums that I purchased, and I really do love it. I think that Taya's vocals are miles progressed compared to the first album. This is obviously the second. Compared to that first album, she's come a real long way. Then you've got Empu on guitars. He sounds fantastic. Thomas, his synths and piano work is really great. Certainly on tracks such as Gethsemane, Swan Heart, and Sacrament of Wilderness. Really brilliant stuff. Absolutely lovely. Absolutely cracking ripper of an opening track, Stargazers, which is this really grand, epic symphonic metal track. Devil and the Deep Dark Ocean is a heavy number. Passion and the Opera, pretty grand stuff. The Pharaoh Sails to Orion. And of course, the absolutely beautiful Sleeping Sun, which closes the album. That track alone is probably why this album ranks a little bit higher than Wishmaster. But I love this. Absolutely love this. Released in 1998. This is a glorious album. A real fairy tale of an album. So, on to our number 5 then. Things start to get a little bit more complicated here. This album is actually the first Nightwish album that I ever heard. First album that I purchased. Released in 2011. This was the second album to feature Annette Olzon on vocals, who has a fantastic voice. I think she's got a great voice. I don't think she's quite as good as the great Tarja Turunen, because she is something quite extraordinary. But there are some brilliant tracks on here. I love the sort of heaviness of Storytime. That's a brilliant track. The outright beauty and majesty and power and the folk-infused elements of I Want My Tears Back. It's absolutely glorious. Same with Rest Calm and the very upbeat, kind of joyous Last Ride of the Day. I love the folk-infused Turn Loose the Mermaids, as well as the Crow, the Owl, and the Dove. Absolutely glorious. But the reason why this one doesn't rank a little bit higher, because I will admit, those tracks that are good they're more than good. They're great. They are absolutely amazing tracks. The reason why it doesn't rank higher is because I can take or leave Slow Love Slow. Really not a big fan of that. Ghost River's a good song, but hasn't got the same sort of oomph. Scary Tale, can leave that. Arabesque, leave that. Song of Myself, Imaginarium, the title track. There's a real kind of polarity here, because you've got some great tracks, and then you've got some tracks that are really forgettable. Sort of ones where you've heard it once, you probably don't really need to hear it again. So that's why Imaginarium doesn't rank quite as high as my number 4 album. The album before that, Dark Passion Play. Now this album is a brilliant album. I think this is a fantastic one. I love that epic, heavy opening track, The Poet and the Pendulum. Really brilliant. I love the fact that Annette Olzon's vocals, she has like a real clean, clear, crisp voice. And then you've got Marco contributing a lot of vocals here, and I love that kind of the way that their voices work together. I think they had a real good mix. Bye Bye Beautiful and Amaranth, 2 tracks that people, Nightwish fans, readily cite as being absolute fan favourites and quite special. Cadence of Her Last Breath is a good one. Master Passion Greed is glorious. That is heavy, it's got power, it's got atmosphere to it. The Beautiful Eva is a lovely one. I love the kind of folk elements of The Islander, which is a beautiful one, as well as Last of the Wilds. Meadows of Heaven, the closing track, is quite a beautiful piece as well. But album highlights, probably 7 Days to the Wolves. Absolutely glorious. And, well, just to be honest, start to finish, this is a really good album. Dark Passion Play. It was released in 2007. But I just think this is a fantastic one. Really good. It had a difficult job because it was the first album with Annette on vocals, and also it had to live up to the brilliance of the Tarja era albums, which is a tough job, and I think this really did work. This really hit home. It's beautifully well produced. Musicianship right across the board is fantastic. You really do notice at this point in the band the whole kind of symphonic and very orchestral elements and the big sort of soundtrack elements really start to come in there in a really strong way. All the tracks have big background musics going on here, big atmospherics and textures. Dark Passion Play, my number 4, an absolutely killer one. So then we get into the really difficult part. Now, my number 3 and my number 2 are fairly interchangeable. However, I have recently been enjoying one ever so slightly more than the other. So my number 3 is going to be the second album that I actually heard of Nightwish. This was released in 2004. This is entitled Once. Now this is, for many people, it would be their favourite, and I can absolutely understand why. I can appreciate why. This is a glorious album. This is stunning. Tarja is at her best vocally here. The band is really tight. Dark Chest of Wonders is a great opening track. It's got power. It's really got like a symphonic kind of power metal approach to it because it's freaking heavy, actually. I Wish I Had an Angel, with that kind of like weird disco techno thing going on there with the kind of the groove. Interesting stuff, but it's a great track. Very rousing, There's a lot of keys and synths going on there. It's good stuff. Nemo, say no more. Absolutely stunning. One of Nightwish's most famous songs. Many a fan would cite that as being their favourite, and it is an absolutely beautiful piece. It could almost bring me to tears, to be honest. It's so good. Planet Hell and Romanticide provide some seriously heavy metal. Certainly Romanticide, you've got some crushing metal riffs there, absolutely brilliant. Creek Mary's Blood, the kind of Native American influence and vibe there, brilliant track, really emotive stuff, very powerful. Ghost Love Score, which is an absolute epic, it's a 10-minute plus, beautiful epic track, love it. It's just a fantastic album, start to finish, and it's really sad that it's the final album to feature the legendary Taya on vocals. A real shame, however, the band then picked themselves up and carried on. Marco sounds great as well, and where he's providing vocals. Empu's guitar playing is great. Thomas, brilliant keys man, and Yuka on drums, absolutely killing it. A fantastic album. This is one of those albums, almost a perfect album, really. Love it. Love it, absolutely love it. So number 3, Once. So my number 2, the album before that, this is Century Child. Now the reason why this album, released in 2002, ranks ever so slightly higher for me is not because of the lovely fairy tale artwork, not because of that, it's actually because the material here is so freaking strong. The opening track, Bless the Child, is so stunning. Taya's vocals are amazing. I love the power and the energy of that track. Same with End of All Hope, which is a really rousing heavy metal track. Dead to the World, because this is the first album to feature the great Marco on bass and on vocals as well. Dead to the World sees Marco kind of taking the lead on that track, and it really works. Everdream is stunning. Slaying the Dreamer is heavy as hell. It's got some fantastic guitar leads from Empu. Forever Yours is a beautiful tearjerker of a track. Ocean Soul is another stunning one. Feel For You is beautiful. We've got The Phantom of the Opera, which is quite well renowned. And then we've got the very grand and very beautiful Beauty of the Beast as well. I absolutely love this. And this, weirdly enough, was an album that passed me by for quite a long time. And then soon as I picked this one up, filled in that gap in my collection, however many years ago that was, it rocketed in my estimations. Absolutely love this album. I think it's stunning. And I think that just really on the strength of tracks like Bless the Child, End of All Hope, Everdream, and Slaying the Dreamer, those tracks in particular is the reason why for me this ranks ever so slightly higher than Once. However, they're pretty much interchangeable in my opinions. Century Child, my number 2. So those observant of you will notice that there is one album left, and that is my absolute favourite. My number 1 is Endless Forms Most Beautiful. So this was released in 2015. This is the first album to feature the stunning Floor Jansen on vocals. Now, you may be surprised that this album tops Century Child and Once in my opinions, but that's because I absolutely bloody love this album. This is one of my favourite albums, just across the board. I think it's glorious. This was the album that really got me into Nightwish in a big way. I did see Nightwish on this particular tour at Wembley Arena. God knows how many years ago that was now. I can't remember if it was in 2015 or 2016, but I love this album. We kick off with Shudder Before the Beautiful, which is just epic. It's powerful. This is a really heavy album, actually. This is, in my opinion, probably Nightwish's heaviest album. Floor's vocals are amazing. The edge that she brings to the band, the power, is just eye-watering stuff. Marco sounds fantastic as well. His contributions really stand out. Weak Fantasy, the second track there, is freaking heavy. It's a great one. Elan is beautiful. That is a really lovely track. It's very uplifting. It's a beautiful song. Yours is an Empty Hope is freaking heavy and it's just bloody great. My Walden is a beautiful kind of fairy tale track. It's very epic. Same with Alpenglow as well. Edema Rue is a beautiful song as well. That's a real bring you to tears track. And of course you've got that closing epic, that 20-minute plus, The Greatest Show on Earth, which really sees Troy performing an absolute array of mastery there. Real expert musicianship across the board. Absolutely love this album. I really do. I think that this is so underrated in terms of the sheer beauty of this music. This is just stunning. This is stunning. It's heavy. It's really emotive. I can't help but sort of almost come to tears when I listen to certainly a few tracks on this album. I think it's absolutely stunning. This is a beautiful, beautiful album. If you'd never heard Nightwish, I would say check this album out, as well as check out Century Child and Once. They're the kind of the essential three in my opinion. I love this album. Absolutely love it. Got this nice digi form there as well. Or media book form, I think they call it. My number one album, my favourite Nightwish album, and an absolute favourite across the board album for me, Endless Forms Most Beautiful. Glorious. Absolutely stunning stuff. So, just to recap, my number one being Endless Forms. My number two album, Century Child from 2002. Number three, we've got Once from 2004. My number four, Dark Passion Play from 2007. Then we've got Imaginarium at number 5. That was 2011. Number 6, we have Oceanborn from 1998. Number 7, we have Wishmaster from 2000. Number 8, we've got the debut album, Angels Fall First. And my least favourite, Human to Nature. So there you have it, my ranking of the catalogue of the legendary Nightwish. Very interested to hear the thoughts and opinions of anyone out there who's a Nightwish fan. If you've never heard Nightwish, you've never checked them out, give them a chance. Check out Endless Forms Most Beautiful, check out Once, check out Century Child. You've got nothing to lose. They are a freaking excellent band. If you like symphonic metal, if you like heavy metal, you're going to love it. Let me know your rankings of the catalogue of Nightwish. I'm very interested to hear, of course, the thoughts and opinions of others, as always. Thank you very much for watching, my friends. Do feel free to like and subscribe. It's very, very much appreciated, as always. Take care, my friends, and above all, stay heavy.